Bakersfield.
Present.
Sarah from Channel Islands.
Go Dolphins.
Trevor from Chico.
Go Cats.
Carolyn from Dominguez Hills. Christian from Dominguez Hills, thank you. Daisy from East Bend.
Present.
Elizabeth from Fresno.
Votes yes.
Tori from Fullerton.
Go Tots. Go Titans.
Got it. Did you hear from Humboldt? Precious from Long Beach.
Was bad.
It was bad. Got it.
Thank you.
Jocelyn from Los Angeles.
Present.
Natalie from Maritime.
What time is it?
Okay. Alice from America.
Wrapped up.
Diana from Northridge.
Go Huskers.
Rachel from Pomona.
Go Broncos.
Christian from Sacramento.
Stevie's up.
Adonis from San Bernardino.
Sierra.
Sierra, thank you. Angelica from San Diego.
Present.
Alondra from San Francisco.
Gators.
Zoe from San Jose.
Go Spartans.
Mark from San Luis Obispo.
Go Mustangs.
Kenny from San Marcos.
Go Cougs.
Brianna from Sonoma.
No donation.
In these streets.
Yeah.
Wow. Diana.
Go Warriors.
We do need more.
Thank you. Before I let you know about the approval of the agenda, we're scratching out action item A and B because we've completed our campus bids, at least for the months that were available. We do have 3 more months left over from the calendar for the year 2020. So please go back to your campuses if you're interested and then get the chance to host. Now's the time to look at it. I'll send you more information for that sort of stuff later. Okay, so if there's no objection to the approval of the agenda, with striking out action item A and action item B under new business. All right, seeing that there's no objection, I will take the approval of the agenda with consent. All right, before I move on to public comment, Rob?
Yes, I want to make a quick announcement about the video camera in the middle of the room here. Just wanted you all to know that this is the first test run for us of actually recording the board meetings. So it's a 360 camera, it sees the whole room, and so just wanted you to be aware that you are being recorded now. And if you have any questions, let us know, but this is something that was initiated by last year's board to start experimenting with.
All right, thank you, Rob. We'll move on to public comment. Public comment is an opportunity for members of the public to directly address the legislative body on any item affecting higher education at the campus or statewide level. Any members of the public? Yes.
Hello, my name is Dale Endrum. I'm a formerly incarcerated doctoral student at Cal State Long Beach, pursuing an EDD in education leadership with a focus on community college and higher education and an emphasis in social justice. It seems the more that you pay for a degree, the fancier title that they give you. So, I just wanted to thank you all for being here in Long Beach and gathering to serve your fellow CSU students during a beautiful summer day. I also happen to be one of the finalists for the CSU student trustee position, so I wanted to make sure I was here today to at least kind of watch and hear and observe the meeting, just in case I get called up to the big seat and I need to be prepared. So A, thank you all for being here, and B, thank you all for doing what you do and selflessly serving your fellow students.
Thank you. Is there any other members of the public? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to reports of staff and officers. We'll start with Rob.
No report.
All right, we'll move on to Michelle, our Vice President of Finance.
Yes. Yesterday, the Finance Committee went over our current fiscal statement. If you have any questions about finance or just the budget in general, please feel free to reach out to the Finance Committee or me. I had mentioned to them, but I will mention it to to the entire board right now that, the board ultimately approves the budget for the next fiscal year, so even though you might not be a part of the finance committee, you still are fiscal stewards of that budget, so, if you have any questions, let me know. That's it.
Thank you. We'll move on to Grace, our Vice President of Budget Affairs.
So I will be missing the last day of CS Unity next month to represent CSSA at the Joint Legislative Audit Committee to discuss the recently released state audit. And gauging campuses this plenary, it seems like there is a gap in information to the body that the audit affects the most, which is students. And because we've heard two different perspectives, my top agenda for the hearing is to pursue the truth. So every campus got a stack of business cards, and on my business card I included my personal phone number. So if any of your campuses have questions or feedback or perspectives or insights or anything you would like to share about the audit, please contact me before that hearing in August. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. We'll move on to Winona, our Vice President of University Affairs.
Updates for everyone. So I've been this past summer, but it feels like past summer. This summer I've been talking to a group called the Real Food Challenge. And they've recently brought to my attention that the Chancellor's office is planning to do an update to the policy that was passed here in CSA 2014. The Real Food Challenge, if you don't know what that is basically trying to make sure students are eating more nutritious, more healthier meals. However, there's some wording that the Chancellor's office wants to take out, specifically the wording that kept the Chancellor's office mandated to have Real Food Challenges, or at least Real Food Challenge on every campus by 2020, and also taking out certain words that would make the policy a lot more flexible for them rather than the stand hard policy before. So after talking to them, it sounds like they want to work with the board in the future of either writing a resolution or maybe presenting a policy of some sort, or presenting a resolution, or help at least writing a resolution. So if anyone is interested, you have my card and my email, and you can talk to me afterwards as well, but that is the end of my report.
Thank you. We'll move on to my report. I have no report, but I'm gonna let our student trustee present a report.
Hi everyone, my name is Juan Garcia, and I am your 2018 to 2020 student trustee. So that's curious for my name tag. Real quickly, just some information about the committees that I sit on the board of trustees, in case you'll have any questions about any items on the agenda, not for this upcoming meeting, but every other meeting for the rest of the year. I am on the Education Policy Committee, the Finance Committee, the University and Faculty Personnel Committee, and I'm actually the Vice Chair of the Government Relations Committee. So if you have any questions on all the bills and the bill positions that the CSU takes, so the Chair and Vice Chair of that committee, we have almost monthly meetings with the Office of Advocacy and State Relations and with your Ashley, who's the Vice Chancellor that's kind of staffing that committee. So they always give us a ton of information on that, and they basically, I think 3 days ago, they walked us through every bill position that they had. So if you have any questions on those, or even what they mean, because sometimes they're kind of confusing, like what does it mean when the CSU is tracking this bill, or when they're neutral about this bill. I hopefully answer those for you. As far as what I've been doing this summer, 2 weeks ago, I met with all of our chancellors here at the Chancellor's office, and we talked about a number of different issues. Obviously, the audit was a big one. So if you have any questions, I mean, I'm not auditor or anything, but we could definitely talk about it a little bit on what I've heard from the vice chancellors and from the chief audit officer here. Talked about the fourth year quantitative reasoning requirements, and also the application fee increase and other stuff like that, which is my segue into next week's board meeting. So the board of trustees is meeting next Tuesday, July 23rd, to Wednesday, July 24th. And just some things to watch out for if y'all are two items that really stand out to me are the 43 quantitative reasoning proposal, and also they'll be discussing a period of public comment that will, at least to my understanding, will happen in August. So the committee will meet separately from the board. Even though there's no board meeting, there will be the committee on education policy will meet, and just to hear public comment from various stakeholders, as changing that requirement has worried some that it could disproportionately affect underserved communities. And then that committee meets at 1 o'clock. And then at 3:30, the committee on audit is meeting. There'll be a special presentation on the state audit from CSU. Then on Wednesday, there will be the committee on university and faculty personnel meeting at 9:10 a.m. And they'll talk about, we'll actually be voting on proposed increase for on the salaries of the presidents. And that's pretty much it as far as highlights for the board, things to look out for. But if y'all have any questions right now, or if you come up with a question after and you didn't get a chance to ask, just come find me. So, thank you. If you have questions.
Yes, Trevor from Chico.
So you said you'll be voting on a salary increase? Can you?
Yeah, so there will take a vote. So there'll be a presentation on it, and then there will be a vote. So yes.
Can you just like a little bit more detail about like having this?
Yeah, so basically in exactly a year ago, it's July of last year, the board was considering executive compensation increase, like a fancy way of saying, well, we're considering paying them more, right? Giving them raises. So they hired an outside consulting firm to give us information on, or at least just compare our president's salaries to other institutions around the nation. But then the board really felt they weren't really comfortable voting on it at that time because the information that they had was simply salaries. They hadn't considered like housing stipends or like cars, something like that. They hadn't considered everything, right? So they sent it back to the consulting firm and asked for more information, a more comprehensive look. But that information can take a lot of time to gather because essentially what the consulting firm does is they send out a letter to all these institutions and they say, hey, we need this information, right? And that's not necessarily those institutions at the top of their priority list, so it can take a while to gather all that data. So finally, a year later, we have that data, so there'll be a special presentation on that, and then a vote.
And what committee is that in?
The committee on university and faculty personnel, which meets Wednesday at 9:10 a.m. And it's if you look at the agenda, it's the third item on the agenda, but the first item is the approval of the minutes on the consent agenda, so it's technically like the second item.
And do you know what the last time they got a raise was?
I don't know. So last year they didn't get a raise so from what I understand, a lot of people thought that they got the raise last year because we talked about it, but they didn't vote on it. They proposed it. At least the presidents didn't get a raise. They haven't had one since Ross.
Yeah, I think Rob can clarify.
Yeah, I can help out with this one. Looking at the agenda, I actually don't think that you're being presented the new policy this time. I think it's just the general salary increases that they propose each year. So for example, the CSUEU, the staff union, collectively bargains for raises every year, so it's set. They don't have to, there's no doubt what they're receiving. Same thing with California Faculty Association. Faculty have bargained for certain salary increases, but each year that the chancellor wants to give small percentage increases to executives, he has to have that approved by the board. So this year, it looks like they are proposing a 3% increase for executive employees as just a general salary increase, not the overall policy change. That's what I'm seeing based on the agenda here. So again, that would include the chancellor and vice chancellors, and then the university presidents, just a base 3% across the board, it looks like.
I can clarify a little bit.
Cool.
It was a little confusing also last year because there were two different things on the agenda. So there's executive compensation policy, and there's executive compensation just as the increases or just their total compensation. So they were presented two different items. Executive compensation policy is looking at the overall policy of how we compensate our executives. This isn't the policy. This is just considering a raise for the executives. If that makes sense. And so that I know the big buzzword last year was
that took the whole year, are they still considering the actual policy change? Or is that just like, here's the information you asked for and they're not really considering it?
So, frankly, I don't know. I think that information will be, because there will be a presentation. I think that information will be presented to the board. So executive compensation policy is not on the agenda. So the way that the board agenda works is they don't give you like the presentation materials, it's just kind of a background, right? But there's always a presentation on something. My guess is that we will get some of that information, though I'm not 100% sure when we'll look at the policy part of it, because it's not on the agenda this time, and like I said at the last meeting, I'm terrible at predicting when stuff will be on the agenda. But I mean, now being on committees, I might get like a couple of weeks of heads up, but that's kind of the best I can do in terms of knowing when we'll try with different things, I guess.
And I definitely recommend to have Juan's information, contact information, always reach out to him. Yes, Rob?
I realize I didn't answer another part of Trevor's question. You asked, when was the last time that they received salary increases? In the board agenda, if you look, there's actually the history from 2010 to this year about what the salary increases have been each year. I can summarize it real quick. It was 0 from 2010 to 2014, and then it looks like it was somewhere between 3 and 2% every year after that.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, Trevor?
I just feel like we need to have some dialogue about the fact that the Board of Trustees is considering a salary increase right after the audit came out, and I don't know if you can like speak to that or anything, but I mean, I think we share frustrations with the student at large that this is not gonna look good. And so how do you think the Board of Trustees is gonna feel about that? Is that even gonna be talked about?
So, it definitely is not gonna look good. The thing that I've done from the board, at least from like my 1 year there, is that they care a lot about optics, but they won't let optics define their decision, right? It won't be based on how this will be perceived, right? Which in a sense I kind of agree with. Right, it's not worrying about what people will think and then letting that base your decision. So what I think is, if they believe that our executives deserve or if the board collectively believes that our executives deserve a raise, they will approve it, notwithstanding the results of the audit. And I can speak a little bit on the audit, if you like, at least on my conversations with the vice chancellor, if that's okay.
Sure, if you want to clarify something.
Yeah, so at least from what I've heard from my conversations with the vice chancellors and with the chief audit officer here, is that when they were through the audit process, because there's a state auditor and then the deputy auditors come down here and work with staff at the chancellor's office and basically go through drafts line by line and say, oh, you're wrong here, or this is actually what it is. Essentially, their belief is that they wrote the headline of the audit before they wrote the whole thing. And that's just straight up what they told me. Because if you read the audit, so pulling back, in terms of parking, the CSU conceded those ones, right? I'm speaking solely on the reserve right now, right? In terms of parking, and the audit said that the CSU hadn't done a good enough job of providing separate alternatives. So instead of just building more parking structures, they didn't do a good enough job of providing information on, public transportation or things to reduce the cost of parking or reduce just density. The CSU conceded those points, right? So I'm speaking now just on what the auditors called a surplus. It's kind of iffy. So the chancellor's office is upset at the fact that they even called it a surplus or even suggested that it's discretionary. Essentially, what the chancellor's office is arguing is that it's not discretionary and it's not a surplus, they're reserves. And they compare it to, any institution, I'm sure your ASIs have reserves. The state's rainy day fund is a reserve like this. Essentially, what the audit said was, they told the CSU, you should have informed the public presented with a plan that says in case we don't get enough money from the state, these are our alternatives. And usually it's tuition increase, right? The main alternative, if you don't get funding from the state, right? And that's just like a contingency plan, like in case you don't get funding, this is what we have to do. The audit said that you should have included the surplus or the reserve there. Essentially from what I learned, they did not include it because they didn't think it was appropriate to use reserves for those costs. So tuition covers ongoing costs, right? Because it's an ongoing form of revenue, it should be used to cover ongoing costs. Reserves are for one-time emergencies, so they deemed it, they said it would be irresponsible to use one-time reserves for ongoing costs. Because essentially, what would happen is, okay, we get underfunded, we use the reserves to cover these costs that tuition would cover, and keep in mind these are ongoing costs. Next year, the legislature doesn't fund us that because we cover them, now we don't have the money to fund those again, so we'll cut them anyway. Does that make sense? So then, that's why they didn't include it, even though they recommend, so now the audit recommended that they include it in the report to CSSA, so what I got from it was that they'll include it, but they'll say, even though we think this is extremely irresponsible, or would be irresponsible or inadequate, we could, or we have these reserves available. Right? And also, real quick last thing, Grace mentioned that she'll be flying up on, what's it called? For the joint legislative committee on audit. The Chancellor actually asked for a hearing before the joint committee, and he has asked that that the state auditor be present at the meeting to actually discuss the meeting, because the Chancellor's office staff is really, I don't know if they're really upset about the audit and what it, that like just like the headline grabbing part, because also the audit suggested that we build up our reserves more. We have 1.5 billion reserves when our operating budget is 7 billion. And then they cited this organization and said, oh, this organization suggests that you should have a minimum reserve policy, even though we don't have minimum and maximum. And then when you look at the organization, they say you should have enough reserves to cover 6 months of operating costs. Our 1.5 billion reserves only cover 2 months. So, you know, it's kind of weird to see the headline when compared to the report.
Thank you for that. Grace, you want to add a comment?
So that we can try to get as many perspectives and information so that, since our organization hasn't taken an official stance on the audit yet, so if you need more information, again, reach out to me, or I can also connect you with CSSA staff. You can reach out to Juan, you can actually read the audit, you can share a fact sheet, just make sure that we kind of get all, both perspectives or all of the perspectives, and then we can continue the conversation at a time. Trevor's question was, or his concern, was for us to have a conversation about executive compensation and the vote. Since the executive compensation policy isn't going to be the agenda tomorrow, I would suggest that you all read the agenda. We had a executive compensation resolution that we passed out of the board last year, so read that for context about the policy. And the increase that they're going to be voting on tomorrow, and all of the context is in the agenda. So definitely encourage everyone to read it. Thanks.
Thank you, Grace. All right, we'll move on to new business. Oh, wait, I totally forgot. Reports, Michael.
I'm sorry, Trevor, did you? Yeah, sorry, I have a lot of questions. I believe there was a bill last year, I think it was like 930, that if executive compensation was increased and tuition would it be increased. So if this vote is approved, does that mean, was that bill even never passed?
That bill is currently in Appropriations Committee, so it should be moving through after the legislature reconvenes. CSSA does have a support position of that bill, and I testified on behalf of CSSA when it was in Senate Education Committee 2 weeks ago. So yes, that bill is still pending, and it's still moving through the process.
The one thing I would add though is that bill prevents an exec comp increase the year that they are also proposing a tuition increase. So in this situation, the bill wouldn't impact anything, unfortunately.
Can you say that again? Sorry.
So AB
3930 would prevent a executive compensation increase to occur the same year that they are proposing a tuition increase. So if they are not proposing a tuition increase, as they are right now, then they could still move ahead with executive comp increase.
Thank you.
And I definitely recommend that these seems like topics you definitely want to discuss, so agenda item requests, so that we can be able to discuss this officially as a board. Michael?
Thank you. On the note, since we were talking about the audit, I'll start a little bit later in my report than I planned. So staff and I had the opportunity to meet with Steve Relier, the Chief Financial Officer for the CSU. We had about an hour-long meeting, and we discussed all of these topics, and were able to ask quite a bit of questions. So just a quick note, something I would add is that it really depends on your perspective on it, right? So if you're outside of the CSU, you might see it as a surplus or extra money that they're having, but they consider it as a reserve. So to answer Trevor's concern, I think that they don't see it as an issue because they see it as reserves. So they wouldn't see that audit as a problem. So I just want to address that really quickly, that your perspective is different depending on where you're sitting at the table. Okay, so some of you may know, I'm currently stationed in Pittsburgh, so I'm a data analytics fellow at PPIA, Public Policy and International Affairs Junior Summer Institute, Carnegie Mellon University. That doesn't mean I'm not doing work. So even though I've been out of the state for the past month, I've had quite a bit of meetings. So aside from working with execs and staff on this meeting, as well as our onboarding, I've been meeting with external stakeholders and getting the opportunity to introduce myself as the new CSSA president. So 2 weeks ago, I went to Sacramento and attended a meeting for the superintendent of public instruction, Tony Thurman, college affordability work group, where we discussed what should be the superintendent's priorities for college affordability, short-term and long-term, moving forward. So I met quite a few people from different sectors of higher education in the state of California, and after that, I had the opportunity to meet with Governor Newsom and the higher education stakeholders. So it was about 13 or so nonprofit organizations that all work within higher education. So I was there for CSSA. I was sitting next to the UCSA president. The SSCC president was there as well. Some other organizations are there. I'm not going to list the whole thing. If you want to know, just ask me. But some of the other ones were Education Trust West, and I found the opportunity to meet Public Policy Institute of California's Higher Education Policy Center director, who actually stepped in. So because I had the opportunity to meet with him, I reached out to him. Some of you might know that when I was running for president, one of my goals was to increase student voice in other areas outside of the CSU as well as inside of the CSU. So I actually asked if we can have more student representation, to have a higher education advisory council that kind of guides where the research for PPIC goes. And I've been invited to the next higher education advisory council meeting in October. So look out for updates on that. I've gotten started on some of the research projects that have been ongoing. The Black Male Student Leader Research, I'd say we're about a third of the way done, doing interviews and gathering data, and that's with our partnership with Education Trust West. If you got elected to the Social Justice and Equity Committee, you'll be getting an update from me on that research in the coming months during that committee meeting. Okay. I also want to reiterate about the Board of Trustees meeting this upcoming week. How many of you, just raise your hand really quickly, if you plan on attending or speaking? Okay, so a couple of you. Take the chance to go to the CSSA office and hang out. We're here, so the Board of Trustees is going to be in this room, and so connect with staff while you're in town. So, as I mentioned before, we did have the opportunity to meet with the CFO of the university, and since I will not be able to be in town for the week, I did record my Board of Trustees report that I'll be playing during that meeting. If you don't know, the CSSA president does get the opportunity to provide a report to the Board of Trustees. So look out for that on Wednesday. And tomorrow, the executive officers will be meeting with executives from the CSU. So if you have any questions that might not be able to be answered by us, because we can answer quite a bit of questions, and also staff has that ability as well. We will be meeting with some of them tomorrow for a short time, so we can't hold them up forever, but we can ask really crucial questions that you all might be able to have. Okay, so finally, I want to take maybe a 1 or 2 minute discussion really quickly from you all for what you expect from our reports moving forward. You heard quite different variations of the different types of reports. Mine was really in depth, talking about some of the meetings I've been going to. I talked a little bit about the future. But what do you all expect from us when it comes to reports? Do you want the whole rundown, or do you want just like a little bit? So just raise your hand and we can have this discussion. Rachel.
I was wondering if there's a way to put it on like the Google Drive so that I could read it. I'm more of a visual reading person, so if that could be possible, I think I'd really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for that. Normally, that's what gets done by executive officers putting in the agenda. Not gonna lie, we were pretty new to it, so I think by the time it had to get done, we were all just like, oh shoot, we didn't write our reports in time, so that's our fault. We'll make sure we do it in the future. Anyone else? Alice and Elizabeth.
Yeah, so I like the idea of having a little bit more of a thorough update. Like they're all really good, just to kind of give more context. I don't know, when you're here over the weekend, you get a lot of information, so to just hear highlights is, I don't know, it's just nice to have like more in-depth versus brief.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, so I think if you're a part of a committee, like if the chair, you should have a report on what has been going on in the committees and all listed on them. It would be great just to have an overview of what's going on to keep us updated.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, thank you. Are there any questions regarding my report as well? All right. Alex.
All of you are doing really good. I'm proud of you all.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Okay, end of report.
Thank you, Michael. We'll move on then to new business information item 2019-2020 special officer elections, July 2019 update. So I'm just gonna go through a brief update for y'all about the elections coming up. So we have our special officer elections happening in August on Saturday 10th. That's right before CS Unity. The deadline for the application is gonna be Monday, July 22nd at 5 p.m. The filing information packet is available on the website. You should be able to, I don't know if it was showing the old information, but you can go through there where it says packet, and that gives you a lot more good information. To remind you that the 7 positions that we have is Academic Senate Liaison, Alumni Council Liaison, 3 Civic Engagement Officers, depending on the region, Northern, Southern, and Central, the Social Justice and Equity Officer, and Sustainability Officer. In the packet is information about each of the roles and what they do, so definitely read through that. I know for me personally, I served as the SJAC officer, so if you were interested in that position, do reach out to me. I can definitely tell you more information, more detailed information about the role that's outside of this, and that's outside of the Constitution. That's about it of an update from my end. Is there any questions that you wanted me to clarify? Oh, Elizabeth.
Hi, yeah, so I read over the Constitution and all those forms. I was just wondering from your perspective as execs, what do you think are the most important qualities for someone to excel in these roles, specifically these civic engagement officers?
Grace.
So in the Constitution, or I'm not sure what the roles are listed in the Constitution, but the civic engagement officers are really going to be the people who drive student engagement and mobilization when it comes to all of our legislative efforts. I'm also going to be making like an internal change of using our civic engagement officers as more of as an advisory role for all of our bills stance proposals that we offer to the committee. So they're going to be serving as an advisory role to inform us on the proposals that we present to the committee based on the needs of that specific region that they should be the experts on.
Any other questions? Michael?
Yeah, so you asked about other special officer positions as well. So I think when it comes to special officers, of course you have to read the Constitution, know what the role entails. And I also think that you might want to have a little bit of goals before you go into the role. I think you should take some time to develop those if you're thinking about it. Because the last thing you want to do is get into the role and then wonder what you're going to do from then forward. We don't have a lot of time together. As Brandon stated, we have about 10 meetings together. So we want to hit the ground running as soon as possible. So So if you're interested in going to the special officer role, I highly recommend that you already start looking into it. You develop a little bit of a plan right for it.
Michelle?
I want to speak on behalf on the sustainability officer position. I know that there was a lot of trouble with that last year because while that position exists, there's really no formalized setting within CSSA for that officer to truly do their work within sustainability. So if you're interested in running for that position, I highly recommend that you look at it with an open eye or an open mind and think about ways that that position can be improved. So I think if you're running for that position, or if you know someone who's interested in that position, that role and responsibility probably is going to be more tailored towards what that role is actually going to be doing rather than for the future, rather than actually having something to do in the realm of environmental justice this year. So make sure that if you do run for that position, you're able to attend the plenary meetings from your ASIs or individual ASIs. Also, if you're not already going to the plenaries, or if you're not recognized by your ASI as a voter designee, I think it's really important for all of you to encourage your individual campuses to ensure that they can provide the guaranteed funding for special officers to come to the plenaries prior to them actually taking the time to apply for these positions, because it is a lot of work, and there's obviously a disconnect between our ability to incorporate our policy into practice. So it's really a work in progress, and I think people need to be aware of that.
I'm just gonna add 2 things to that. So it actually is a requirement that if you are not on the board, that you guarantee that that individual, either your campus AS will fund them, or they have the ability to fund themselves. And to add as well, it is a time commitment, so you really have to make sure that you have time for these special officer positions, especially social justice and equity. There's a lot of work behind that, and I really hope the person who moves forward and is interested in that position is really committed and is really passionate, and you really have to have a lot of goal setting moving forward with that. Anyone else?
And we're also going to be doing our work before that August election to think of intentional ways to make the onboarding better and to support all of our special officers. You said applications are due tomorrow? So
No, not tomorrow.
Yeah, applications are due tomorrow. So if you needed that sign to run, maybe you didn't think about, you could be the person to serve in those capacities before. This is maybe the sign you needed, and I hope that everyone thinks about possibly running or encouraging another person from your campus to do it.
Any other questions about special officers? No? Brandon?
Yeah, so I just want to make sure, even though yes, it is currently open, recognize that there are signature forms that need to get completed. So recognize that it's not just a you piece alone, that you're going to have to get some signatures done and a brief statement. Just want to make sure that.
And also, if you are planning to run and you won't be making it to the plenary, please let me know, so we can figure out the best way for you to present your statement there at that time. Okay, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to our second information item, the 2019-2020 CSU system-wide committees. Michael?
Cool. Brandon?
Alright, Zach. I just wanted to make sure you all knew, we've reopened the CSU system-wide committees because there was a lack of applications for certain committees. These are committees that the CSSA has the ability to make recommendations to the CSU Office of the Chancellor. They do the official appointment. All costs associated with attendance at one of these committees, and typically they're here in Long Beach, are covered by the Office of the Chancellor. So anybody, any student in the CSU is at a very base level eligible, but need to meet the minimum requirements of CSU office holders, which are available on the website. But please share that. You will see if you go under system-wide committees, there's information located in here, including the online application. It's a fairly short application, but again, this is a renewed application. So if you have heard that other people have applied, and that they may not have gotten it. These are the, here it is right here. The application is available. So I encourage you to push this out to members of your, or to the students on your campus, and you will see the new deadline dates. So Friday, August 16th is hopefully placed. Technically, they started in around July 1st, so we want to make sure that we get students in those positions as soon as possible. Again, everybody here is eligible to apply, but encourage you to push this out to students on your campus.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that system-wide committees are a great way to get involved. I served on a system-wide committee years ago now. When I was a sophomore, it really opened my eyes to how the CSU operates. You also meet CSU staff. It's kind of interesting because you're used to like your campus staff, and it kind of broadens your perspective outside your campus and outside of the CSSA space. You also get to meet people from other campuses as well, in different areas that you might not have had the opportunity to do otherwise. This is also a great way for other students to get involved. You don't have to be on the board, you don't have to necessarily be involved with CSSA or apply for system-wide committees. So if you know someone that wants to find a good way to get involved in system-wide advocacy or representing students, this is a great way to do it. However, I will state that we do ask for reports of how the meetings went. That way we can follow up with that. We actually get information, and that we can make sure that we stay together. And I don't want something to happen in committee and that we don't know about it, and then that the whole purpose of the committees is to actually have that representation, have that advocacy.
Any questions? Christian from Dominguez Hills?
Do you know where we can find out how often these committees meet, and then like their means of meeting, whether it's some of them are in person, some of them are online?
They're on the website. Each committee has a different amount of meetings that they do a year. Some of them are like seasonal. Some of them are only summer. The one that I was on was once a semester. Some of them meet through video, so you won't have to travel. Mine actually met in the Chancellor's office, so I had to go through the VP Student Affairs to organize the travel. So you can find it all on the website.
Yeah, so the honorary degrees will meet once in person before the January plenary, or the January Board of Trustees plenary meeting, but they will get a kind of a packet that they have to review before then. So theirs is actually only once a year. At that time, the Services to Students with Disabilities Advisory Committee, I believe, meets twice in person, and depending on the work, potentially more via video or Zoom. And the Summer Arts Advisory Council, I believe they're at 2 times a semester. So.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to our last information item, 2019-2020 Policy Agenda Development. Rob and Michael, go for it.
So break out your policy agendas. I know it's a beautiful document. Take a look at it. I know we discussed it a little bit in the morning, but now Rob and I are going to talk more about that. But as we look for the clicker, so the policy agenda really is a guiding document for the organization. It's a guiding document for the organization that really guides how we move forward and sets our priorities that we can use, Rob and I can use, and those who meet with external stakeholders to say, okay, this is the priorities that the board set out for the year. This is what our students find important for us to focus on. Yeah, so it's a set of statements that establish and describe the strategic goals and priorities for pursuing our advocacy. So this is the what and why, not the how. So you realize that you wouldn't see CSSA is going to do this because we don't want to set it that restricted, right? You never know what's going to happen. You never know what issues about to come up. So we actually have the opportunity to set our own hows depending on what you all want to do. That way you don't set yourself to a specific.
1
Yeah, this is a really important one too because, thanks. It might feel intuitive to try and prescribe what you will do for the year, but I think it really sets you up, one, to either be limited to what you're able to do, or two, maybe prescribes the wrong method. So maybe you get to a place where you thought that at the beginning of the year some social media campaign was going to be the right way to address an issue, but really, 6 months down the road, you realize that, well, maybe the social media campaign isn't the most effective way. Maybe a advocacy day somewhere is. And if you had said at the beginning of the year that you had to do this social media campaign, technically you would get to a place where you could say you didn't achieve your goals. So really, the purpose of the policy agenda is to be specific enough to say these are the things we care about, but broad enough for you all to develop those strategies throughout the year to decide what is going to be the most effective way to achieve that goal. I think if we just press escape here, yeah. All right. So you all have had the document with you this morning, and what we want to do is just go through a little bit about kind of like why it's structured this way. So one thing that you'll see is that it's an evidence-driven format, right? Like it doesn't just say we care about food and housing insecurity. It says why we care about food and housing insecurity, and we want people to know why these are issues to you all. So in addition to, like, for example, this one was from the 17-18 policy agenda a couple years ago. It was around affordability. And it's easy to say that our students are in need of additional financial aid, but what are the actual things that we can say to prove that they are in need of financial aid? Well, we know that the total cost to attend is really only made up, a small fraction of that is tuition. So, the total cost of attendance that are non-tuition costs are really strapping students with this pretty big burden. We know that the majority of our students are, about half of our students are graduating with debt, and the majority of them are coming from low-income backgrounds. So we want to paint the picture both to our external stakeholders, but also to our internal stakeholders, folks like the Chancellor's office. Why do we care about this issue? So I want you to think about the policy agenda kind of in two ways, maybe more. Let me think about the first two. One is that it helps guide your decisions, right? So throughout the year, you want to try and create a small set of goals that you can focus on and be effective, right? Because if you had this is not inclusive of all the issues students are facing, right? These 3 policy priorities. I'm sure you can name a whole bunch of other ones, but the idea is that you only have a year. You saw one of those calendars the other day where it's like you have 8 meetings really to do this. So how can you make the most of those is by focusing in on the issues that matter the most. So one of them is that throughout the year, you will use this document. Let's say somebody brings up an issue, I don't know, I'm just gonna think of one, planting trees on campus, I don't know. And they want you to to advocate for spending $10 million from the CSU system on planting trees somewhere. Well, the first place you would look to see if that's something the CSSA maybe should take on is the policy agenda. You would say, is this a part of our policy priorities? And if it is, then you would start having a discussion about whether or not you think it really contributes to like educational equity issues and whether or not it serves the campuses in the way you think it should. But the first thing you're going to point to is your policy agenda to say, is this a priority we decided on as a board that we'd like to take on? But the other thing that it does, it's kind of a research report. One of the things that I think is really valuable about this document is that it is an external document for us too. When we go to Washington, D.C., we bring copies of these documents and we give them to stakeholders. And many times when we give them to stakeholders, they're like, wow, I didn't know this. Or, wow, there's data about this thing. And so one of the things we're doing is advancing some of our strategic priorities to be a resource on CSU students. We are going to stakeholders and we are giving them the information they need to know what the issues are for CSU students across the system. So I heard some folks talking this morning about what did the strategies look like last year, right? Based on our policy priorities, what did we actually do? And see, these are some of the strategies that we pursued in some of the different areas. Am I doing this one, or did I just take this over from you? Okay. So, for example, the food and housing insecurity, wellness resources, campus safety, these are some of the things that last year's board did in order to try and pursue this policy goal. So you can see it went from the fixed financial aid campaign to co-sponsoring bills to writing resolutions that supported student safety. I'm not gonna stay too long on these here. Same thing, here's some of the strategies from priority number 2. Again, you can see it's from adopting resolutions, fighting tuition increases. The other thing that you should know is that this is an important document for staff when we're developing CS Unity and Chess as well. So when you all develop your policy agenda priorities, it really shapes the way we think about the people that we're going to invite to speak at Chess and things like that. So, you know, we bring people accordingly. We will bring the Institute for College Access and Success because we know that you all want to know about affordability. We'll bring, you know, legislators who may have specific perspectives on issues that you care about. And then number 3, some other ways, some of them are partnering with external stakeholders to advance some of these issues. Again, you'll see programming at CS Unity and Chess is kind of throughout, testifying at hearings, et cetera, et cetera. So now I'm going to turn it over to Michael.
Thank you. Okay, so now you're actually going to have a chance to give some perspective as to what y'all currently think. So each of the executive officers, or vice presidents, so Michelle, Winola, and Grace, will actually be leading discussions based on each of these topics. So those 3 are going to separate around the room, and then we're going to give you maybe 5 to 10 minutes, which each one to focus on each policy priority from this past year, and just say what you think, give your feedback.
Maybe a little additional context that's important. The feedback that we need is how strongly you feel about how this captures your current priorities, because what's going to be proposed, I think it's important that we talk about that real quick. Do you want to?
Yeah, so the way that we're proposing the format for this upcoming year, so who was around for last year's policy agenda discussions? Yeah, so we're actually changing the format. We're proposing to change the format. So the way that it usually happens, or it happened last year, is that we all wrote out on documents what we thought were important to our students. But at that time, as a student leader, like, do you currently feel like you can write down everything that's really important to your students? Okay, so I felt the exact same way as some of you were shaking your heads no. So I remember just sitting there and staring at it and being like, okay, how I barely got here, I don't really know what I'm doing yet. How am I supposed to like set together this document that is extremely important for this organization that I had one meeting for? So we're proposing amendments, or just whether there should be amendments or whether there shouldn't. Now, mind you, we're going to have the opportunity to create our own for 2020. So now it's going to be a year-round, not calendar year, or it's going to be calendar year, not school year. So you can see the one in front of you says 2018-2019. So since it says that, and it goes up until 2019, we can go to the end of 2019, and in future board meetings, actually craft our own for 2020 once you already get back to your campuses, once you know the issues that students are facing, and once you know really what you want to edit into this document. Because last year, I really felt like when we were doing it, I did it and then kind of went past it and didn't really have like a stake in it, right? Like, this is a really important document for the organization, and I just kind of blew by it and was like, okay, got it done, let's get out of the way. But really, we have the chance to make a document that really has the strongest input from our student leaders. And now isn't exactly the best time for us to be able to put that together. So that's why we're proposing that we reaffirm this strategic document up until the end of 2019 and develop a new one for the 2020 calendar year. And that way the incoming board, when they come in July, will be able to come in and say, okay, we have this document that could last until the end of the year, and then they have the opportunity to create their own halfway through the year. And especially with the legislative calendar that starts in January, we have the opportunity to advocate for it right off the bat with any policy priorities.
One technical component of this, you may be asking why are we proposing this, or why is that a part of discussion? It's because the Constitution restricts our current ability to manage this process differently. The Constitution is a little too specific. It says that certain things have to happen by certain dates, and because of that, we have to figure out how to just reaffirm this one now in order to develop the new process and get the constitutional language fixed in the meantime. So that's kind of why we're doing it in these two pieces also, because the Constitution kind of requires us to have approved a policy agenda by August in the way that it's currently written. So you all have the decision to make, essentially to say, are we comfortable with just reaffirming this one and then creating the new process, making in through internal affairs and board the necessary edits to the Constitution, or not. So that's kind of why we're even in this place at all. The other thing that I want to encourage you all to think about as we go into these groups, I always say you're never going to be able to include every single word in every piece of language that you may think it should be included in these, because you would just have to list literally everything, and it starts to get a little lengthy. So one of the things I would encourage you to do in thinking about whether or not you think something needs to be modified or added is ask the question to yourself, does the current language stop me from advocating for the thing that I think we need to advocate for? So for example, in priority number 2, it talks about accessibility of the CSU system. So it talks about the capacity challenges of the system, that there are eligible students that are being denied admission, and that we care about that issue. What it doesn't explicitly say is we should address impaction, right? But I would argue that I don't think you need to say that we need to address impaction in order for that to be a CSSA issue, because we say we care about accessibility. We think there's a problem, right? So as you're going through this process, and if you think of something you see as missing, also ask the question, but is there language that would allow me to advocate for that despite having something specifically mentioned? So just wanted to mention that as well. Want to add anything?
Just something little. So really think of this as a chance to also advise the next board. Because when we go through that in January, with the process that we're proposing, when we go through that, you're gonna allow the next board to see, okay, this is what last board thought was important. Just like how you're looking at the document in front of you, this is what last year thought was important. And a lot of these issues aren't changing, right? Students still have accessibility issues. We still have affordability issues. But what things are happening with the times that we can inform the next board on? Because there is a chance that, okay, probably not, but none of you might come back, right? Like that's the reality. And then they're gonna come in and be like, okay, let's just scrap this whole thing. But let them have that chance to get into their roles, to be comfortable, and then have actually the most informed document. You can go back to your campuses, talk to your students, and actually find out what issues are important to them before you vote on this important document. Cool. Any questions before we go into logistics? Okay, so each of the vice presidents will be around the room, and then start with campus connection groups. So if you're with me, you could just start at whoever you want to start with. And then if you're with Zara, you could also start wherever you want to start with, but then make sure that you rotate to each one for each of the 3 rotations. So Michelle will be having policy priority 2, accessible, affordable, and sustainable. Grace will be having policy priority 1, access to housing, food, and wellness. And Winnow will be having policy priority 3, promote the academic success and holistic education of all CSU students. So stand up, join your campus connection group, and then get started.
Yep, I will do the prompt question one more time. When you're in your specific group, like for example, Grace has the priority number 1, enable adequate access to food, housing, wellness resources, etc. When you're in Grace's group, you're just going to talk about that one specific item, and what you're going to do is be providing feedback on whether or not you think that there are any edits that need to be made to that section to accurately capture what you think needs to be there in order to advocate for these issues until December, essentially. So you're just looking to see, are there any modifications that need to be made? Yes.
Just to clarify, this is the campus, not just for the directors.
Sure. Well, there's 3 of them, so what happens with one thing?
Crisscross apple.
Priority three, which ensures the academic success and more educational experiences for all. What changes would you like to make?
Because for me, I just think of like student engagement, getting students engaged on campus. Because nothing is just part of it. Holistic could mean like different aspects of education that aren't necessarily present. So living environment, mental health resources, all the things that contribute to because I like the way things change.
So that's my, I think we just need to clear that up with them. Yeah, no, I think we need to just clear up. still have about 2 more minutes in this group.
Or just, I wanna review it too.
It's kind of like just examining the definition of our actions based off of our priorities.
Right, so if our 5-year plan says that we wanna, like, I don't know, increase da-da-da-da by this, then we should probably make our priorities align with, okay, so we want to.
But I mean, it's like flexible, that was like,
Right.
we'll have to like, something that we like in the strategic plan and make it our own, it doesn't have to be like, it says this and we're gonna do that. I don't wanna do that, I just wanna see it, that's all.
So right now, the strategic plan is, the 3 elements we talked about: educate, empower, and influence.
Okay, I think it's all.
They're online too.
I was about to say,
If you wanna check it out.
Yeah.
But I like the way this priority is worded. I mean, overall, it's a good standard. Does everybody like holistic? Is there a word that might be more clear?
I think the holistic kind of captures it pretty good personally. I think it's a good word to use when you're trying to get like the whole of like the experience or like listed.
1 more minute.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm like stealing people's laptops
no,
and
it's
like
fine.
stuff.
Sounds like you guys sound pretty competent for it.
Bottom line though, like
I don't know what session board it is. I think we should get that, but yeah, y'all, yeah. So this is the white paper that, the academic senate passed, academic senate.
All right, let's wrap up that conversation and let's rotate. So Michelle's group will go to Winola's group. Winola's group will go to Grace, and Grace's group will go to Michelle.
What does that work for me? No, I feel like they kind of gave it to us, right? It was supposed to be like student success, like faculty, staff. Especially this because I've never looked.
Can everybody see Grace? She's over there in the corner. If part of the Michelle group right now wants to split up and need to disperse yourself into other groups, I think that's also fine. Yeah, I am confident that you can handle it too, Michelle, and Grace. I'm sure you did a great job. All right, I'm gonna get the timer started now.
This is policy agenda. Not late when they start to super cross out, right? With the lady that's sitting right there.
would include sometimes engagements with education locally, state level, federal level, because not all students know or understand how the government works. That's very important.
Not like, but, also in the overarching statement, it says holistic, and I think when we said holistic, really like the overarching view, like, so like the whole entire spectrum, maybe like if you want that specific wording, include that as well, if that's what you're looking for, instead of just saying like a holistic, like we'll explicitly say, civic engagement.
Yeah, because academic success as a like just success in general, but not just in the never be just being educated around what's going on.
For me, this speaks a lot to home because East Bay has the lowest graduation rate for the second lowest. But I know that our graduation rates are not good. People are dropping out. And some of that is our African American population, and we're looking into resource centers for them. So I know holistic speaks to that, but I'm wondering if we can get some words about like supporting students specifically in the bottom percentage of graduation rates within our schools.
So I know it says like encourage students to be more active like out of class. So our school, for instance, is a commuter school, so that's been a big issue is keeping kids on campus. I know it's been echoed by other schools. Is this having a way to kind of try to help that?
Again, so I'm gonna reference it again. The word holistic is trying to put all those things like the overall arching like 4, 5, whatever your experience you have in college, you would be a part of clubs, you would be able to engage government, like it's like the idea like everything that it's not explicit wording, and like there's a reason why it's not explicit wording. It's just assumed that like join organizations, like stay on campus and give them access. But like I said, like the word, like if you want to change it, it's all up to you. I'm just giving you some
So is holistic more like you do a little bit of everything, or should it be more like balanced? So you do what you see fits best for you at your own time. I'm not sure if there's a
Well, holistic is like ambiguous, so it can really mean so like it's accessible to whatever issue makes sense. So I think that word is perfect. The issues not all over individual.
I was gonna say something different to be honest. Oh, okay. I was just gonna say that I like the wording of one size fits all standards in like the second paragraph, but it seems to be more focused on the transfer students and the how like those pressure of graduating within 2 years from community college into a 4-year institution is really like a lot of pressure, and the fact that they end up not really being that involved in like other stuff is a really important issue that I think we can move on. So I think more specific focus on that is really needed.
Me personally, I'm not sure if the ambiguity is a good thing, because it can be seen as a cop out, as oh yeah, we're just doing holistic, but it's like, okay, what is the desired outcome, and what are the desired results of what they're going to see as they go out to holistic experience? Is it, a certain place in the percentage of graduating a certain industry? Is it quote unquote success in whatever field that they're going into? I feel like
One more minute.
It's ambiguity. It also allows us to kind of say, oh, we did our job, but nothing has really changed. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind moving forward. Because we could be doing great extracurricular engagement, but
let's wrap up that conversation and let's do one more rotation. So again, Grace's group will go to Michelle up in the top of the gallery. Michelle's group will come down here with Manola. Manola's group will go over to Grace over in the corner.
It's like a 360. That's cool.
Yeah.
You want to sit down?
No, sit or stand, it's optional, I mean, everybody else sat in the last day.
We're not like
I feel like let's sit down and we'll be able to get that.
All right, we'll get started now.
So, obviously, again, priority three, ensuring the academic and inclusion of all students. Like, if you guys get time to read it, you can just shoot your thoughts at me, as well, so.
I think like addressing the federal program, I know like there's some rumors that they're trying to redirect the funds of the federal program to other things. So definitely like looking into that, like what's the status of it. And also data, like how many students are covered.
Bouncing off of that, I think for the program and how it is 6 years, and what happens with transfer students is they'll spend like maybe 3 to 4 years at a community college using that program because they need it, and then when they transfer to a university, if they're there for 3 years, that final year, then they don't receive it, which makes it difficult to receive funding. So maybe they're looking at structuring it to a way where it's like, okay, if you go to community college, you get your first like those 3 years, and then that will also encourage students to get out faster and transfer, and then you have another 3 years of Pell Grant that we don't have to worry about that third and final year if you need that third and final year for senior STEM skill, not having funding for that final year, because I know it's been a big issue for some a lot of transfer students.
With references, graduation rates for underrepresented students, and so I'd be interested in looking at the statistics for it, really, so just to see the numbers of what that's gonna look like for both graduation and retention rates, for underrepresented students. I think that'd be interesting to look into, so.
Yeah, maybe like the experience trying to get an idea of what the experience is for a lot of students. I feel like sometimes a community that sort of doesn't really get focused on so much is students that have some kind of disability. Like as far as like what their experience is like, what their retention rate is, and what barriers they're facing, and what's needed for them to succeed just like everyone else.
Priority three, are we also addressing like the availability of courses? I just want clarification. Or is it just equal opportunity, or is it like even like availability of those courses that are offered so we can actually graduate?
Oh, are you asking paragraphs or what?
No, just in general for priority three, I feel like I don't see that there where it's like, okay, we're talking about, yeah, equity and one size fits all standards and everything, but we're not even addressing like, okay, like the availability of those courses that we need to graduate, which is like realistically the bigger issue there, is that courses aren't available.
Like graduate 4-year track with like because
Yeah.
you can't get priority, their classes aren't offered, so you can't get done, but then it's unrealistic goal to graduate.
So you're mostly like course consistency and making sure that there is just like a substantial amount of courses being offered, and like so that way students can actually get into classes.
Yeah, but I also feel like sometimes with the graduation initiative, we're also like, what is it, like making it feel like if you don't graduate in 4 years, like it's a negative thing. Like if you want to graduate in 4 years, you should graduate in 4 years, but if you don't, it's fine.
It's really yeah. That's why I like in the second graph.
2 more minutes.
To be sure, students, it's not like a one size fits all thing.
I think they should also focus on like the number of advisors provided for each like college, so that some colleges don't have as many advisors as other colleges, so some students aren't able to get all the information, which kind of helps them back from graduating on time because they don't know the prerequisites or different internships they may have had to take for their college.
I'm gonna say this too as well. Liking what I'm hearing, but overall, the overall arching priority, it technically includes all of what you're saying, but there's no specific language for it, because once you write specific language, it locks you in that commitment. So like, let's say like we put some of these things that you guys can address here. Now, like you're saying, like this is all we're gonna focus on, instead of saying like giving yourself like a broader, wider spectrum, instead of you just focusing, like clamping yourself down, and that could be a good or a bad thing because it can make you already aim and reach that goal, or it can just make you stuck because now you're not really being flexible on your own policy, and you can't really move on. You have to stay on that one topic or that one suggestion. Just keeping that in mind.
I just feel there should still, at least separately, at least the discussion or like focus on professor like tenureship, or like whether or not they're kind of just like, you know, hired for a year or half semester, because those kind of, at least from like personal experience, a lot of like college or like classroom atmospheres get like really heavily swayed depending on whether or not a professor's tenured or not. You know, because we'll have some that they have their tenureship, so it's like I'm chilling, not really my job, and then we have others who are like, I don't have tenureship, so I'm chilling, not really my job. Yeah, and accountability on, you know, it shouldn't really matter too much, like to the point that it impacts, you know, the atmosphere.
All right, let's wrap up those conversations and head back to your seats, and we'll wrap up this BOD meeting. You're welcome, Christian.
I'm just doing this for experience, so like, I grab my
So thank you for all your feedback and insights. I'm taking it in. We're going to be discussing it with staff as well. And we're going to see if there are any necessary changes that we may need to make for the August meeting. And then we're going to be proposing that at the August meeting for pretty much reapproval. And maybe adding little changes that we got from you all. Yeah. So after this meeting is what got to an exec added some things, or why some of the things that we received as comments from you all weren't added, so that you all can get a chance to hear some of the justification on our side on that end. After that August meeting is when you all and we will get the opportunity to really start synthesizing what we want the 2020 document to look like. Any questions about the policy agenda that we didn't address already, or any looming questions about moving forward or what this is going to look like? A good question I got asked was, who's the main audience for this? And really, it's everyone, right? So we're going to be using this when it comes to external stakeholders to talk about what students find important, also legislators. Students could also refer to this document to see what their student leaders think are important for them to, for us to focus on. So really everyone, and as well as us, right? Like we could re-refer to this document and say, okay, we thought these things were important. How can we realign ourselves to what we consider most important?
Oh, that's a great question, and I would just like to add to that. I think you explained it perfectly. Just to also give you an idea how to operationalize this thing. So really each committee owns this policy agenda, right? Again, because these issues are not exclusively legislative or exclusively system-wide affairs, the committees really get to take this document and say, how as a committee are we going to address these issues? So you all deliberate and develop strategies that are unique to each of the committees. The other thing about the audience, I just wanted to also mention, about 6 months ago, Dr. John King, who was the last Secretary of Education under President Obama, he's now the President of the Education Trust in DC. They reached out to me and said that John King wanted to use our policy agenda in speaking with a group of higher ed administrators at this conference to use as a model for how he thought a student organization best clearly defined their goals and clearly communicated the priorities of students. So when I tell you that people care about this document and they read it and they know what it means when you all say that it's an issue, it really does matter and people really do listen. And so yes, it's internal, yes, it's external, it's kind of all things to all people, but I really want you all to take pride in this document, have ownership of it. So in that way, I really appreciate the engagement that you all had today, and we really take your feedback seriously.
Thank you. Zara, what do you do?
I think actually we have one more question, Elizabeth from Long Beach. Thank you. So I just wanted some clarification on the timeline that you all were mentioning earlier. So I know from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, but from August to December is when we get to present bill ideas to different legislators and really have those conversations with them so that they can take to the Capitol when it comes to January through April, I believe. So then when we bring in this policy agenda, and we're mentioning that we're going to be switching it to a different time, during January, we're going to adopt a new one for the 2020 year.
By January, unless I'm mistaken, the new one should already be adopted.
Okay, so then whatever we would be working on with, so we would be working with this policy agenda currently that we have up until the 2020 year, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so my only concern would be when we go out with legislators with this policy agenda in mind for bill ideas, then we'll have new areas of interest in January.
Depends, right? It depends on the document that you all approve. But remember that they're vague enough to cover just about every field that students are struggling with. So policy agenda it changes, but not by much. So you might add a couple of things here and there, might scale back on some other things that aren't really issues, but I don't think that adopting a new policy agenda will really mean that we would switch priorities completely, because students are still facing the same issues.
Thank you. Thank you. Just start wrapping up the meeting. A couple of things for y'all. Item requests are due July 29th at 5 p.m. So please write that down. And if you ever forget what the deadline is, you can always check out the calendar on the website. It has the dates of when the agenda will be posted and when the deadline is. I'll also at the beginning send you all reminders. And just for August, keep in mind that, we only have one day, so it's really short. We may not necessarily, be addressing all of your agenda item requests. All right?
Really quick. What if, so I'm a board member, what if I don't know which committee, I should submit my agenda item request to?
You can only submit an agenda item request to a committee that you belong to. So if you're a board of director, for the board meetings, only board of directors. If you're in the finance, any member of the finance committee may do so. If you see the form, it will give you the option to say, okay, I'm a member of this committee, like that. So, Brandon is pulling up so you can see behind me.
But even though you're, like, only members of the committee can only submit agenda requests to that committee, you can also, if you feel like there's something pressing in a different committee, you can try to find a board, or try to find a member of that committee to, submit an item through. I remember I did that last year, with internal affairs, even though I sat on the finance committee, so it's definitely very doable.
And this deadline is set for everyone, including the execs, so, if you submit something at 4:59, they're not gonna be able to add it to the agenda. Any other super quick questions, comments? No? Okay, we'll move on to announcements. Any announcements? I just wanna thank everyone, execs, staff, you all did an amazing job, and all of you, thank you for being wonderful and great with us. Brandon?
So two quick announcements. The first is that if you all are attending CS Unity, you'll be receiving some additional information in the coming weeks about participation in the case study competition, which you may or may not have heard about, but other important reminders. And then the second is, I guess three, make sure you pin it around your area. But the third is, if you do not want to keep your name tag, I will be in the back collecting them so we can reuse them for sustainability reasons.
Any other announcements? Michael?
You all now have our business cards, so please reach out. I mean, as I said earlier, this organization does operate between meetings. So if you have any questions that randomly pop up, on my business cards, my cell phone number, so you can text me, email me, all of that, or any of the other executive officers. Thank you.
All right, I officially adjourn this meeting at 12:08.